who is going to offer a photo history of Jocotepec, Jalisco. She's a native of Jocotepec, and she's a member of the Association of Historians of Jalisco since 2006. She's authored The History of Jocotepec from Pre-Hispanic Era to the Revolution, A Photo History of Jocotepec in Jalisco, and Flora, Fauna, and Architecture of Jocotepec. Also, Jocotepec's participation during the War of Independence, and a fishing fleet on Lake Chapala, which brought her an award for being selected as one of the top family stories in the state of Jalisco. Please welcome Aida Aguilar.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be with you again. Like last year, as she said, I was here with a fishing fleet, and the one that I had a reward. So I'm more than pleased again. And this time I want to share with you my last work. It was a lot of work, labor of love, which brings you the idea how life was in the pre-Hispanic time, colony time, independence time, and revolution time. And in the end comes many aspects of our modern life. And it just not does not just show Jocotepec, does not show Jocotepec because the behavior of one town is the behavior from another one. And the reason, the only thing that it changed is the patron saint. But besides that, they have the same festivities, the same behavior. And probably you don't know the reason why Ajijic has one saint, patron saint, and Jocotepec has a different patron saint and different date for the celebration. And we have to go back to the colony time. The first priest who was catechizing the area was monks, Franciscan monks. And those monks, they were taking a tent to the Indians. And the one who showed up, they were not, they were welcome. But the one who was not showing up, they were whipped on the cloth. The second time they were whipped with no clothes. So that is one of the reasons that the area is very Catholic, very Catholic. So they dedicated towns to different saints. Like Ajijic, they dedicated to San Andres, and to Jocotepec, to San Francisco. So we celebrated in different times. But the behavior is almost the same. And for the people who has read that book, they say it's an excellent way to learn the history from the area. And I think so because it has each page has a photograph and a history that is related with the picture as close as possible. And for you to understand better, as you can see, that is not my English is not my language. I will invite a great friend who has dedicated days, weeks, and months to translate that work for making you possible to read. And for no money, just probably a kiss. And before that, I will take the minute while I have the microphone to invite you to everybody to take a sample of that drink. That drink is a pomegranate, brown sugar, and a little alcohol. So it's going to be a little extra for each one. So in the end, the ones who is available to drink, they will be welcome. Everybody. So I give you the chance and a big applause for him.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Miguel Chamoya, and I was raised also in the area. And, okay, is this better? Yeah. Okay, thank you. First, I have to say that it's obvious that from a lovely lady like Aida, a gift goes a long way. It was my pleasure, of course, to translate this book. Indeed, it was a great deal of effort, but I'm happy to say that it seems that it's been well received and well understood as well, which is my objective. The book itself is a little bit different format than you're used to seeing in a book. The photo history, every page has a photograph with some historical information that goes along with it, documenting some information that the photo may lend itself to, and in some cases, history that is directly related to the image itself. So the best, Aida thought that the best way to give you a taste of the book would be to read some of the information that's in there that goes along with some of the pages. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not the subject matter expert. I'm not the historian. Aida is. So if you have some questions, she's sitting back there with a microphone and she'll be happy to entertain them for you. So I'll defer to her. Okay, yes, sir. The name of the, sorry about that. I'll get right before I'm finished. The name of the book is Photo History of Jocotepec, Jalisco. And it's centered around Jocotepec, Jalisco, but it includes historical information of the whole region of Lake Chapala. Now, our intent, of course, was to have a projection deal, to be able to project some of the images for you and talk about them. But that wasn't a possibility here today. As an alternative, we looked for the possibility of having some large photographs made, and we were unable to procure those as well. So I apologize for that. What I'm going to do is describe to you the photograph a little bit. I'll show it to the crowd if you can see it, and then I'll talk about what the text that goes along with it. So the first photograph is a Spanish ship, the ones that were traveling between the two continents for 3 centuries, starting the 16th century. And it's called Transatlantic Voyages. This is a model of the ship that crossed the Atlantic for nearly 300 years, requiring about 3 months for the voyage. When they came to America, they brought olive oil, silk, wine, livestock, and especially horses worth about 20 Indians each. That is, the products imported were those not permitted to be produced in America in order to protect the Spanish producers. The fleet would travel in convoy and would carry about 30 passengers per ship in over 20 voyages per year. During the return voyage, for over 100 years, they took 2,707 tons of gold. I'll say that again, 2,707 tons of gold, and enough silver to build a bridge that would connect the 2 continents. They also took dyes, cotton fabric, which were collected as tribute and sold at low prices in Spain. The trips were long and torturous for the bulk of the population. The ship was uncomfortable, lacked privacy, except for the Spanish nobility, travelers. Questions on that?
Where did they come from?
They were coming from Spain, and I understand Seville was the port. Is that correct? Okay, she's telling me that at the end she will entertain your questions, so keep them in mind for her. Thank you. next one I want to talk about is a simple picture of cocoa beans. A little tray full of cocoa beans. The cocoa bean. Although its origin is tropical, the Aztecs considered it a drink for the gods and was greatly appreciated for the health benefits of its consumption. It was also used as currency, and at the time there was already fraud. In the case of cocoa beans, they would remove the bean and fill the shell with mud. During the colony, the official price for 140 grams of cocoa was set to 1 silver real. A bunch of 24 beans ranged in value from 5 to 25 pesos, and a tapatio was equivalent to 3 or 4 beans. The Gentile tapatio comes from the word tapalo, which were cottons or linen shawls with fine embroidery work done by Creole women in the city of Guadalajara, and appreciated very much in other places. The next one is not a photo, it's an image, it's a map of the region that includes most of Lake Chapala and about 50 miles south, encircling a fairly large area. And it was known as the province of Avalos. Avalos being the cousin of Hernán Cortés. Everybody knows who that is, right? Province of Avalos. Pánfilo de Narváez came from the west in 1526 by order of Hernán Cortés. Such was the impression when the Spaniards saw the size of the lake and the surf in it that they named it the Chapalito Sea. Alonso de Avalos, cousin of Cortés, liked this land as it was good for agriculture and farming. With available manpower from well-organized and sedentary towns. In 1536, the Viceroy Antonio de Mendoza granted Avalos the Merced Real, which is an area of land given by the crown, as repayment for his enterprise of conquest. The reach of Alonso de Avalos as encomendero or landowner, lord of the land, was great. He was judge, jailer, collected tribute, changed or removed the indigenous leaders, and decided the fate of an individual. He enjoyed the right of the repartimiento, which consisted of a mandatory rotary labor service for work such as the construction of cathedrals. Jocotepec sent to 2 natives for the construction of the cathedral in Guadalajara. Also the construction of post offices, roads, inns or hospitals, and to work the fields of the Spaniards during seed time and harvest, to transport people and merchandise related to official business, and to attain to high-ranking clergymen when they arrived to visit. After the prohibition of the repartimiento, which is this forced labor, in 1671, the natives were paid a restitution of 1 or 2 reales per day. This paid labor, however, reduced the time available for them to work and produce their own sustenance. The native of Jocotepec paid tribute with cotton, hens, dried fish, etc., to the encomenderos, and in return, they received the teachings of the Catholic faith from the friars. In 1786, the New Spain was divided into intendencias, similar to counties, as a result of the Bourbon reforms, incorporating the towns of Avalos to the New Galicia. The province of Avalos existed from 1535 to 1786. The first period corresponds to the time of the conquest, and the second starts the moment when Guadalajara becomes the head of the intendencia. Is everybody able to understand me? Okay, am I going too fast or anything? Okay. The next photograph is a photograph of the Hacienda of Jocotepec, which is a town a little west of Jocotepec. And it's titled the Encomienda. An encomienda does not define the ownership of land. It defines a tributary process through which the natives of Jocotepec, Atoyac, Sayula, Amequa, Tecaluta, Teocuitlan, Zacualco, and Colula plus other localities of Colima, Michoacán, and Aguascalientes were forced to pay to their encomendero, the lord of the land, and the inhabitants on it, a tribute with animals, currency, or work. In other words, the encomendero not only was granted the land, but all the inhabitants, the native inhabitants on it. This is the beginning of the latifundios, large extensions of land that give rise to the haciendas, which had the primary purpose of supervising the evangelization of Jocotepec, Huehuetlán, Potrerillos, and San Martin. Around 1850, Zapotitan, previously known as Rancho Zapotes, according to the Book of Baptisms of Jocotepec, was not yet an hacienda. This hacienda is established as private property of the estates of Huehuetlán when Rancho Zapotes became a gift from the godparents to the newborn grandson. In 1529, Jocotepec is provided water, pastures, and wood for the sustenance of its inhabitants. Let's not forget either the portion of land granted to the church to facilitate the apostolic action. All of the towns before mentioned were entrusted to the captain Don Alonso de Avalos as payment for the military company of conquest. Alonso de Avalos had a luxurious home in Mexico City, and it said that his treatment of the natives was moderate in spite of the wide reach of his attributions, as mentioned in the photo of the province of Avalos. Are we on time? The next photograph is, I'm sure, familiar to most of you, or all of you who has been to Jocotepec. It is the main entrance to the main church in Jocotepec. And it's titled, How They Catechized. For decades, the church took the task of catechizing using candy as an incentive and reward when teaching the attendees on Saturday mornings, excuse me. For many of the poor children, it was impossible to attend because they worked on weekdays. At the age of 7, it was determined if they were apt or not after an examination given by the catechist, which included knowledge of prayers, biblical passages, and communion ritual. Many children felt a great fear of failure. The catechism usually required 2 to 3 years, and to maintain their enthusiasm, attendees were given a ticket after every group review and inquire of the basics of the doctrine. At the end of the year, a much anticipated festival was organized in the area where the teaching was done, and there they could buy food like pozole, tortas, type of sandwich, tostadas, sweets, and fruit drinks. Different dishes required a different number of tickets to buy, and attendees had to bring from home their own plate, spoon, and a glass. Since the tickets were good to the bearer, the poor and mischievous children enjoyed spending and buying with tickets they had stolen from other children who had the discipline to attend Saturday morning gatherings. For the unlucky, it was a great tragedy, often bringing a river of tears. The next photograph, a very old picture of the lacustrine transportation, basically the canoes that you would find on the lake, but at the time they were outfitted with sails. And it's titled Lacustrine Transportation. At one time, Jocotepec had a loading dock located in El Chante. The boats, displacing up to 30 tons, transported cargo and passengers more efficiently by water than by land because of the poor condition of the roads. Boats would wait for favorable winds, which were well known as el guaracheño, el mexicano, el norteño, el tapatío, el abajeño, and el gualimonte. Those were the names of the different common winds in the area. On many occasions, the strong winds forced the crew of overloaded ships to dump their cargo overboard to prevent the ship from sinking. The next photograph is a large gathering which was during a wedding ceremony around the late 1940s. And the title is Marriages. Pre-Hispanic marriages were a social event. It began with an introduction of the couple and the symbolic tying of a knot between the huipil, which is the female dress, and the timatli, which was the male's cape. Weddings were celebrated with the cooperation of the townspeople, who brought chili peppers, tomatoes, chickens, and turkeys, a custom that lasted for centuries. During the colony, friars viewed sexuality as a necessary evil. A family would not accept a marriage with someone else of lesser rank, as this would bring a lower position within the social scale. The marriage proposal was a social event that involved a financial arrangement between the families. The ambassadors of the intending groom would arrive at the home of the intended bride and formally announce its intentions. They usually strove to demonstrate the financial solvency of the intending groom, and if he offered cows and had calves, they would say they entered on walking legs. It's the best translation I could come up with. That's how they would describe a cow that came with calves. The groom's parents would offer a trunk filled with linens. Upon acceptance of the proposal, wood planks full of tachiwal bread were brought into the bride's home. The couple that chose to break this rule would resort to running away, the bride escaping with her heartthrob. Some young ladies were placed in the care of convents until ready for marriage in order to protect the family's honor. Abductions of young women were common. Some were abducted in a sack, others were tied by their hair braids to the horse's saddle, and the larger-bodied women were lifted to the horse by two men. Almost always, these abductions would end in marriage to restore the family's honor. Female adultery was tarnishing to the honor of the entire family. The law protected the husband, who would publish the offense and determine the punishment, which could be as severe as death. In arranged marriages, the couple took time to confect their own costumes and organize their wedding dress. This next image is the one on your left, and it's just a picture of the huaraches. Okay? And they're officially called huaraches de raya, which means lined huaraches, and I'll explain why. The history of footwear in Jalisco tells us that the streets of Jocotepec have seen many models of huarache sandals, as dictated by the time period. In the pre-Hispanic period, footwear was made with deer or boar hide, tanned bark from a tree like guamuchil, tepehuaje, or palo dulce. This model was used without any variations until about the 1800s. The huarache de raya, or traced huarache, was seen on the streets of Jocotepec worn by those who had the means to purchase a traced sole. This meant that the outline of... Did I do that? All right. This meant that the outline...
Hold the mic close and make it so that you can hear yourself clearly.
Okay, is this better? I'm so sorry. All right. The huarache de raya, or traced huarache, was seen on the streets of Jocotepec, worn by those who had the means to purchase a traced sole. This means that the outline of the foot of the was first drawn onto the hide, then it was trimmed along the mark, and holes were punched to introduce the leather laces that held it onto the foot, then worn until broken in. These sandals were widely used during the time of the Revolution. Industrialization brought the availability of footwear by size and distinction between work and dress sandals. The dress sandals, due to the high cost, featured metal shields on the sole at the toe and the heel, which resonated with every step. Has everybody heard those? Anybody ever hear the huaraches every time they take a step? Okay. You had to be skilled to walk on these because the smooth leather sole made it very slippery. With the saddler profession, Jocotepec has the Duran family and the Ramirez family are the huarache makers. These occupations provided sustenance to the people of Jocotepec for many decades, while income from agriculture and livestock generated a great economic boom for a while. This boom came to an end with the installation of the railroad in the area of Porfirio Diaz, displacing Jocotepec from the commercial routes, and evidence of that economic boom can still be seen in many stately homes made of quarry stone fronts, located especially in the first 4 blocks around the main plaza. This here is not a photo, it's an image, it's a copy of the death certificate, or the entry of the death of the pastor Marcos Castellanos. Has anybody heard that name before? Marcos Castellanos. Okay, good. The death certificate of Pastor Marcos Castellanos. Marcos Castellanos is a hero of the Indian resistance of the shores of Lake Chapala during the War of Independence. He was buried in the atrium of the Church of Jocotepec. Marcos Castellanos and his people resisted the Royal Spanish forces on the Isle of Mezcala, on the eastern end of Lake Chapala. Everybody know the island of Mezcala? Okay. For about 6 years, and despite all the suffering, they never surrendered. Jocotepec participated in this war and fought battle on its own soil between the Plazuela, the square, and the church. One of these was carried out on May 23rd, 1814, when Santana came to Jocotepec with 30 boats, 2 guns, and many men armed with steel bars and shovels coming to procure food. Jocotepec was doubly reinforced with a base at the lakeshore and another in the Plazuela, because the Royalists were informed that the rebels would get their supplies there. The daring inhabitants of Jocotepec would steal livestock from the haciendas to send provisions to the rebels. The insurgents breached the fortress, crossed the moat, entered the compound, burned the barracks, and destroyed a large portion of the wall, and left 70 royal troops dead. As a valuable booty, they took the Señor del Camichin, or Lord of the Camichin, the patron saint at the time. The capitulation of the rebels was announced in November of 1860. Subsequently, Marcos Castellanos petitioned the bishop for a transfer to Ajijic, the vicarage of Jocotepec, which was granted in 1817. There he lived during his last days as the most humble servant to the people of Ajijic. He died on February 6, 1824, and was buried in Jocotepec. His death certificate reads, I, Pastor Francisco Madrano, priest in charge, gave a free burial. There was nothing to pay with. He received the last rites. He had nothing to will. This is a fact. Signed, Jose Ibarra Gutierrez. This one is on your left, and it is a photograph of some men constructing a canoe on the lakeshore. And it is titled Canoes. For centuries, lacustrine transportation and fishing was aboard canoes. Pre-Hispanic vessels were made of bamboo and could carry 2 to 3 men. During the period, there were radical changes, such as the construction of canoes. In Jocotepec, canoes were manufactured using pine, juniper, and mesquite. The joints were caulked with cotton fibers soaked with tar or cow fat, making them strong and able to carry up to 80 sacks of garbanzo in the large ones. Fruits, vegetables, and passengers were transported from Jocotepec on them. A trip could last between 8 and 15 days to circumnavigate the lake, depending on the season and the winds, which were known as, and the ones we talked about earlier. The preferred fish was always the amilot, or pescado blanco, the white fish. In the following three types, chilito, ombligon, and campamuchil. Other lake food were lisas, sardines, boquinete, eel, tilapia, crab, clams, charal, shrimp, and frogs. The popocha has a behavior similar to the Canadian salmon. This system of transportation and fishing was displaced by surface roads when internal combustion engines emerged in the first half of the 20th century. Canoes are now only a romantic memory. I'm going to wrap it up with this one. It's the one on your right, and it's just a photo that shows the ingredients it takes to make the ponche that Aida was talking about at the beginning. And it is titled Pomegranate Punch. Ponche de Granada, or pomegranate punch, has an indigenous and Spanish influence. The tradition of making and storing pomegranate punch happens when the pomegranate ripens between June and August. Preparation requires pomegranate juice, sugar, chocolate, sugarcane alcohol, and peanuts. And the process is, place the pomegranate juice in a plastic container, dissolve the sugar and the chocolate in a cup of water, pour the dissolved sugar and chocolate into the pomegranate juice, add alcohol as desired. When it is served, add crushed peanuts and amaze your guests. It is known that in the past, ponche was prepared in two batches. Men's punch with more alcohol, and punch for women with less alcohol, which is commonly called ponche viejero, or early punch. There is a story of some inexperienced men that followed the proper procedures, except to dissolve the sugar and chocolate separately. They made the mistake of trying to dissolve them in a clay pot, the base of which was broken under the constant pounding of a wooden pestle. So they kept trying to crush the sugar into the bottom of the ceramic pot until they broke the bottom out of it. Releasing a cascade of punch rushing over the table and onto the floor. Determined not to lose their product, they tried to save as much as possible by taking large slurps of what was on the table before it spilled onto the floor. We suggest avoiding that mistake. Now I'll have Aida, if you have some questions for her.
Gracias, Miguel. I would love you to make a difficult questions, because the difficult questions are the one that makes me learn and makes me better.
This is not a difficult question.
Can you wait until someone brings you the microphone, please? Thank you so much.
This is not a difficult question. It's where can you buy your book?
Well, after here we are going to be in Eve's restaurant. But after we sample the ponche de Granada, because I know many of you is not going to be able to come, but I want to share with all of you what Mexicans we drink. A difficult question, historical question, yes?
Wait for the mic.
You had mentioned the tapatillas. Could you explain again? Was it a woven material? And then why are people from Guadalajara called tapatillas? Is there a connection?
Yes, it is. It is a connection. It is, one is the currency. Is the currency during the colony. But also it's a piece of cloth. It's a piece of cloth that the lady, they were embroidering, and was very, well, has a lot of work. Yes, labor intensive. Yes. Another one.
I believe the area that you're talking about was the original settlement in the whole area, Jocotepec. Is that a true statement?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. What was the question?
Was the area that you investigated, was that the original settlement area for Lake Chapala?
No, no. Well, the original settlement from Jocotepec was not where it is now. It was in the Chante, and they were living in the mountain. And then the reason that they were living in the mountain, it was because the lake used to grow, and that time used to rain more. So the people that were living in the mountain, it wasn't El Chante, it was the place and it was the settlement. But when the Spanish came to Mexico and Jocotepec in 1529, they forced to the Indians to move, and they forced to move not because they wanted to make it a better life. They were moving because they want them to forget the previous life, and especially the religion. Because as you know, the conquest was the excuse to la conquista religiosa.
The religious conquest.
The religious conquest was the excuse to invade the Indians. So if I answer you well, they were in El Chante and they were moved into Jocotepec. Yes, but I did concentrate because I have to start in one point. The starting has to be always in one point. And if I'm native from Jocotepec, for me it's easy to do the investigation with all people and all the works that it takes with local people. That's why. But is the reflector from Jocotepec is the reflect from the area. Yes.
Here we go.
Are there any of the original Indian traditions that have been incorporated in the present Catholic rituals that they have today, or are they all essentially thrown out? And is there any difference between the religious youth practices here as compared to some of the other tribal areas in the past?
Jumps to my mind two things. They were trying to finish, but they were never really finished. One of them is las danzas. The Indian dances. Probably you have seen a prayer when they come in, and the first comes Indians. They always, when someone of high de alto, status, someone of high status, they always received with Indians and they were dancing. So they kept it until that time. So it's one thing that you still see. And the other thing is still in San Juan Cosala. San Juan Cosala, when somebody passed away in the middle of the night, they sing is a song that they call el alabado. It's el alabado. That it is the life of Jesus Christ when he was going to the cross. La Pasión. Jesus' Passion. It is told in Spanish, but it has kept the music and the way of singing. So, which is a singing as if I could remember something as something kind of weird, but it's the style, because it's the style way that they were singing, but they just put it a Spanish word with a Catholic. So it's el sincretismo. It's the syncretism. It's the only ones that comes on my mind for the moment.
I want to make sure when I ask this question, I don't offend you. Is a high percentage of people in Jocotepec, are they still Catholic, and are they still believing in the same way, or are some people becoming educated and beginning to question?
Well, first of all, I'm not the kind of person that gets offended very easily. And
Quiero saber si preguntas si la mayoría de la gente de Jocotepec sigue siendo muy católica y practicando la misma, el catolicismo de la misma forma, o si mucha gente ahora ya se está educando en
see, I could say that still 90% they are Catholic. They are Catholic because, as I said in the beginning, they were forced. The Indians, they become more Catholic than they only Spanish. they were forced. And the one reason that it was not very difficult to force to convert and to Catholic is because, as you know, the area was rich on hunting, on fishing, on meat, on vegetables, and especially at that time. So it was many tribes around who used to come and fight in conquest. So each tribe which comes in conquest, they leave the they left the culture and the religion, the new one. So they always accepted that it was a good reason to be invaded. So it was easy to accept. So when the Spanish came, they easily accept the Catholicism. But you know, if they were not, they would whip them, as I said in the beginning.
And can I go to Jocotepec and buy a pair of those shoes?
Yes.
And exactly where?
I think it's in La Calle Morelos by the market. And it's a shop that is open every day. But it's also on Sundays. The family that we were talking, Los Ramirez, is a family that they still do the best ones. There is a piece of art in the plaza. In the plaza on Sundays, and you will find also sarapes. And because the sarapes is the cover from centuries from Mexicans. Do you know what a sarape is? So those are the Mexican.
About how much money?
I don't know. All depends. The huarache sandals, as fine that it is, it takes more labor and it's more expensive. Or those are more delicate. Those are for the wealthy people in the old times. But it's also more separate, and it could be 2,000 pesos, 2,000, 2,500, until the 300 pesos is the thing that I remember.
Aida, pardon me. I just want to honor the time commitment that some of you have made and planned your day around leaving here at this hour, and invite you to do so quietly if you need to do that as we continue on now to hear questions.
Someone did ask this earlier, but I didn't understand your answer. Where can we buy the book if it's for sale?
It's going to be in Eve's restaurant.
It's going to be
In Eve's restaurant.
I don't know where it is.
Oh, Dennis and Pearl's collection. Diane's Pearl's collection. And the one who knows me in the market, I will have some books for the one who wants to come in the market on Wednesdays in the market. So you will find it there. Well, the ones that they are leaving more fun for us. More questions?
Are there any more questions? We could see hands for questions. Thank you very much. Oh, here's one. Good.
How large a group of Indians were there in Jocotepec when the Spanish arrived? How big was the community in the area?
Well, the biggest big community around the lake was San Juan Cosalá. And we talk about probably 3,000, 4,000 people just in San Juan Cosala. So I can say that the Chapala area was ¿cómo se dice? Rica en fuentes naturales.
Rich in natural resources.
Yes, was rich in natural resources, so it was good for living human. You know, always has been a heaven, and probably at that time was even better climate than now. So when they moved, it was many small towns, all would not compete between the food. So the biggest ones was San Juan Cosala, and there was all full of small towns. So and the Chante, some of them they accepted to move, and was 13 families, the ones that they moved to Jocotepec. 13 families, and now when we are talking about 13 families, I'm going to tell you something that for me sounds very interesting. When the friars catechized, they were changing the Hispanic name for a Christian name. But they didn't give a second name. So I will give an example. He was called Donatio, supposedly, and they changed it for Jose. So since now you are calling Jose because that's a Christian name. So his sons, whenever he has sons, his name became a second name. So that's why you will find many second names from the name. Sí, Lucía, ¿cómo se llama cuál es el apellido de tu trabajador?
Testament.
It's a Spanish name. What do you exactly mean?
That's the Spanish. But I could say it's still some names like Inez. It was a woman that they put it Inez because she has to have a Christian name. So her family was Inez, her second name. They used their first name as a second name. Became a second name because the Indians, they didn't have a second names. When they catechized, they just put a name. So their family, their sons, had the father's name as a second name.
So an Indian name? So a Christian name, a Spanish name, and then an Indian name?
Please wait for the mic for your questions.
A few of them.
Please, hold on, let us hear the question first.
So was the middle name a Indian name because the father's name was Indian and then they didn't change? Or they had two Christian names?
I think we
What Aida is trying to say is that the initial natives that were catechized and given a Christian name were just given a first name, like Jose, and never a surname or a last name. So from then on, their descendants, the last name of their descendants was the first name of the father, verbatim, as it was.
That's clear. I think it's very, very interesting for me how that it becomes the second names. And still many second names and Hispanic names. It comes to my mind like a Silonsochi. A few of them, they were never removed. Probably because they were a novelty. Silonsochi. And it's a few of them that they have kept it. And it's still around going names like that. And very, very beautiful. Sonancia Silonsochi. Another difficult one. Yeah, those are the ones that make my brain work. Yes?
We have another question.
What is the name?
All of those names of the different winds that you mentioned, is there a name for the wind that we experienced last night?
Yes, now that I think at that time it's going to be Alicios. That time was the norteño name, and the Mexican.